I know I say this a lot, but I'm so excited. Bronco, first start, new transmission, so much good stuff happening. You're gonna wanna watch every minute of this video to really appreciate how much work went into this build and everything that we've overcome to get to where we are. Here we go. This thing has been super good to us and has done more than it ever intended to do. We probably put more miles on this thing in the last year than in the previous 20, 30 put together. Exciting day. This is better than Christmas because it's unwrapping a dream that I've had for a couple years. A bullnose Bronco with a 5.0 Coyote in it. Hughes Performance got a hold of us and said we can take care of this 6R80. It's just so slow and tedious on these stupid lines, making them look good. But we're getting there. We'll hook the fuel pump up to the terminator. All right, so if you've been following along with this build, our 84 Bronco, we stuck a 5-liter out of a Coyote, out of a Mustang in it. Brand new engine. We did bomb around in it in the Mustang for a while. Scott now has the Mustang. It's getting the V10 in there. But one of the biggest holdups that we've had with this build is the transmission. Now, we bought a 6R80 for this a long time ago. I want my builds specific for a lot of reasons. And we want an automatic so that, you know, our wives can drive it and it's a much more user-friendly drive. We've got lots of manuals, the Fargo, the 55, the Silverado, the transport truck, and the Audi race car. They're all manual. And this, we wanted that nice cruising without your passengers, you know, doing the head shake every time you shift. But we were having a hard time finding somebody to rebuild the 6R80 because of parts and whatever, I don't know what. But luckily, Hughes Performance got a hold of us and said, we can take care of this for you. So we sent this core out to them out of a 2012 F-150, I believe. We got Tuesley to source us a mechanical transfer case because I didn't want any electronics in that. And Hughes was awesome enough to record exactly what goes into building a built 6R80. Now, they're the transmission kings, so we trusted them with that, and we really want to show you guys why it is worth every single penny to get Hughes Performance to build your transmission. So let's get into it.
So set up on the table, our 6R80 is getting torn down with the pan being removed, valve body, pump followed by the drums, clutches, steels, and gear set. Off it goes and goes inside for its clean and prep to get ready for being reassembled. From there, Steve will disassemble the pump so he can get it ready to be resurfaced, blueprinted, and the gears lapped. Then they'll paint it with their traditional red Hughes Performance color. That way they'll be able to tell if it's been rebuilt by them before. Now the start of the wizardry. This is the assembly process where it starts off installing the gear set, loading the drums and clutches and steels. Next is installing the rear planetary, low reverse clutches and steel and low one-way clutch. Next, the intermediate and low reverse support clutch pack will be assembled and air checked for proper clearance. There are so many tools that are special to the transmission shops, such as the dial indicators and the long internal snap ring pliers. Next up is installing the direct clutch assembly. Now Steve will align the clutches and steels. And put the dial indicator on it. How's it looking, Steve?
Perfect.
Nice. So anyone who's watching this who's a builder, you already know what's going on now. Steve's assembling the overdrive clutch hub to the hardened intermediate shaft. Now assembling the forward overdrive clutch assembly. Got a little bit of lube on there. Make sure everything fits in nice. And put it into place. Give it a couple turns. All right. Now let's get this final pump assembly together. Steve's gonna torque all these all to the proper specs and then install it into the case. Once everything's all torqued to spec, we're gonna put the air gun in it and check the clutch packs for proper function. Once those are all checked, we're gonna be putting in the seals and feed tubes and the thermal cooler bypass delete. Then we'll install the rear seal and install the manual control lever detent and park pawl. The park and pawl locks up the transmission when the transmission selector isn't parked. Then one of the most recognizable parts, once you open up transmission here, we're putting up transmission valve body. And this valve body is all an upgrade with Sonax valves and solenoids and all torqued down to specs. Transmission, it's all put back together and ready to go on the dyno to get tested. The last step on the dyno is to test for proper line pressures and to ensure it's shifting through all the gears and locking up properly using the Quick 6 controller from US Shift. We'll be putting in the Quick 6 TCU in our Bronco as well.
Okay, so I mounted my transmission cooler. This is from Flex-A-Lite. I'm really happy with nice big. So we got lots of extra cooling. I made this nice little bracket that holds it off to the side, nice and sturdy, even with the wind hitting it, and still leaves me room for my AC condenser afterwards if we put air conditioning, or when we put air conditioning on it. I did have to make a big hole here so I could actually get my fitting on, but now I got to figure out how to run the cooling lines nice and neat. We've got our out coming from the transmission going to the top of the radiator cooler. That goes down and then comes out of the bottom because the hot air rises, cold sink, so naturally it's going to go down. So I think I'm going to loop that around to the inside here where it's nice slow bends. We got the room, and then I'll tuck that up into here, and then from there it goes all the way through here, cools even more, comes back out, and then I have to convert it back from 6N. It would have been nice if it was 8N, but you want it to kind of slow down in the transmission. You don't want to go too fast through here, so 6N, and I'm going to make an adapter with a pass-through or bulkhead to go back from 6 to 8N, and then from there it'll run back to the transmission. Now, The original cooler lines, it went just like this on the transmission, where it comes out, goes underneath the transmission, comes out the other side. But I'm just gonna braze some 8-an fittings right on the edge of the pipe there, and just run the transmission coolers down this frame rail, nicely up and over here beside the steering box, and then up into here. So one line will go here, and the other line will come and go to my bulkhead, wherever I decide to put that. Easy peasy. All right, so we got our fresh rebuild. So we're ready to start putting this in. So we got our torque converter. We verified that it goes up to the flywheel and that the bolt holes line up. We get Loctite and bolts with the kit, so that's awesome. We're gonna take this cover off and put a quart of Pennzoil Platinum 4 full synthetic transmission fluid in there. Now this replaces the 55 fluid that the F-150 is not called for, but this is much better. We're gonna fill the transmission at the same time while it's out because it's nice and easy. So we actually get a dipstick now in here to pre-start it anyway. We'll put our lines on it, we'll crank it over for a little bit. I got my transmission cooler mounted. So all those lines are done. We'll check and make sure that we don't have any leaks. We're gonna change the oil in the engine as well because Scott was bombing around in that 5 liter for a while. And we are almost there. Look at that. It's just a tiny bit of little oil before there. So, nice.
Drink your juice. Drink it. Yes, drink it.
I asked for a quart, but I don't think I'm gonna get a quart in there. Nope, I don't think so.
I'm gonna start running out.
And that's okay. It has been put on the dyno, so I'm sure that it's been tested. We'll put a little bit in, just so that I know it will run out. Throw a little bit of fluid in here, clean my funnel. So we're over full, which is fine because we got to fill up the cooler and we have to fill up all the lines and everything else. So we'll leave it at that for now. I'm sure it's going to take lots more, but this will do us for now. Never ever put in a drain plug without tightening it. Engine or transmission or diff. I'll throw this torque converter in. There's 3 things that have to line up, 1, 2, and then your pump, which goes in the notch. I like to not put the notch in with the pump. I like to put it opposite so I can spin it and feel that last clunk go in. But before we do that, I'm just gonna take a little bit of fluid and put it on the shaft and on our seal. On the inside, we'll put a little bit on our the outside of our torque converter. Now the pump is going this way, so I'm gonna do the opposite. That's 2, and that's 3. That's 3. Excellent. It's taking an old bolt and just cutting the head off and putting a slit in there. Stick that in the engine. That'll work as a nice guide pin. So you can basically hang the transmission off of this. But it'll help keep it from tipping off the jack or whatever you gotta do. So basically you just gotta slide it on there. And it gives you a little peace of mind when you're checking your clearance on your torque converter, because you want to make sure that your torque converter is able to slide back and forth just that little bit so there's no tension on that pump. Otherwise you're gonna wreck your pump. You don't wanna do that. Because that went really well. I just put a strap over top of the frame underneath, and then a jack and a block under the pan, and another strap at the front, and then was able to pull that tight. While I was doing that, tightening the bolts through the starter hole, here to spin the torque converter with my finger, make sure that there was no binding on it, that I still had room. And now I can see the holes, and I can start putting my torque converter bolts in there. So sticking them through there. You can just feel torque converter spins freely, so the gap is good. I'll pull the torque converter tight to the flywheel and put the starter on, and then we can put the transfer case on. So here we go. Okay, so I took a bulkhead fitting, shaved off the threads and the taper on that, took another steel fitting, shaved off the pipe thread on that, got that from V&R. We'll just stick that in there, stick it in a vise, use my other arm as I'm holding the camera, and then we'll just braze that. You can weld it, but I like brazing because it just flows so nice. So we'll braze that together, and we got the perfect 8-end to 6-end bulkhead fitting. If you don't have it, make it. Okay, so got my fitting, which looks really nice. I know that that's nicely sealed, no holes in there. And then I'm trying to figure out how to get this fitting to run nice and neat, this line, keeping in mind that I still have to put my lower radiator hose in place and have it poking out, come through here. I might add a power steering cooler yet. Then it is not working. Nothing. I spent an hour, tried to get a fitting on the end of a hose, that took forever. And so the best thing to do is walk away. It's just not working for me today. This is not going well. I've wasted an hour. So I'm clean up my tools and do something completely different. And I will come back to this maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, maybe next week sometime. Late in the week, I don't know, but sometimes you just gotta walk away. I'm gonna walk away. Stupid thing. Anyway, I clean this bench, on to the next job. Here we go. Okay, so here's what happened. I started cleaning, and then I just told myself to put my big boy pants back on and go back to work. So I found a couple 90s, and that made a really nice pass through right here. So my 1 6-end to an 8-end on the other side there, down low here, and then goes down onto the frame rail. And then my other line goes right up into the top. So it comes out of the transmission into the top, comes out the bottom of the cooler, goes into this top one here. From there, it'll go into a nice little U, and then go into this cooler. It'll go nicely across the cooler, and then go down, and then come back, go down up into this fitting. And then that will end up back into the in on the transmission. Nice and cool and nice and good. These hoses look really good, except I'm out of fittings. So need to order a couple more fittings. So that line is gonna go into a nice U around there. And all of that, even though it's really nice and I'm really happy with how that turned out, it'll all get covered by the intake and you won't see any of it. But also went to V&R and grabbed a piece of pipe. I now have the missing piece. That's the same size as my radiator coming out. So I'll get Vince to weld that right over top of that. We'll weld a little barb on there, and then it'll be the same size hose, which I have laying on the bench there. And then my lower rad hose is done. Then I can put coolant in it. It's just so slow and tedious on these stupid lines, making them look good. But we're getting there. Here we go. I also cleaned up and painted the fittings that come out of the transmission, and then brazed the steel fittings on there, the 8-ends, and then those are my fittings that go onto those lines. So those lines run down the frame rail, and then I gave myself a foot extra, not a foot extra, a little bit extra, but I didn't cut my one coil, which is on the bottom. If I'm short, then I can take this fitting and change it out to the 45 and stick it down here and get a couple extra inches, and then I can just put the other one on here. But I think I'm okay. We'll drill and tap a few more places to secure this line to the frame, and then we're all good. Okay, so I got my oil filter mounted nicely on the frame. Those hoses are tied nicely and into the remote adapter that Vince welded up a long time ago. And now I got Vince coming to weld a fence post onto my radiator outlet cap here and one other piece in here. But this hose actually goes perfectly around my hoses, around the steering box, and then into the radiator here. I'm just gonna get him to weld a little barb on the outside and then weld it to this fitting here. And that is the last missing piece for the cooling system. All right, so we're going for a small size, a nice big size with a nice barb on the end. All these little pieces, you just can't find it. Give me an 1 3/4 radiator outlet on a 5.0 Coyote. What year, sir? What's your VIN? Shut up! This is super cool. This is a Flowmaster intake meant for an F-150, but it's actually a perfect fit for the Bronco. It's got the provisions for your valve covers, and then this, oh, it was like somebody designed this just for this. Nice and even, look at that, oh, wonderful. And then it's got this to hold the air filter. We'll make a nice box for that here somehow. Make that fit. Oh, fantastic. Oh yeah, look at that. Even though I'm used to my diesels and the intake pipe is like that big, but look at that, nice. Perfect fit, there we go. All right, so we're getting close to the transmission mount, but I'm getting excited. And when you get excited, you forget about things. And one of those things is fresh oil change, because Scott's been ripping around this on his Mustang before we told him we wanted our engine back. And Aaron actually dailied the Mustang for a summer or two before we actually got to this point. But definitely time for an oil change. So we are using Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Coyote's like the 0W20. I think it takes a lot of oil. So keep in mind that when you are doing a Coyote swap into a brick nose or bull nose like this, that you do need a oil filter relocate. So part of that was because we did do the oil filter relocate, 100% is getting a new oil change. And since we're gonna be beating the piss out of this thing with the extra tune that Brad put in there, we went from 440 to 520. You just need that extra layer of protection of synthetic, handling those extra pressures and temperatures, so it helps everybody sleep at night. Just gotta get rid of these ugly oil caps and coolant caps. I don't know. We're slowly changing and making it all wonderful and beautiful. There we go. Okay, so I've done a pile of small, tiny little things, all those things that take forever. So we got the power steering line done. So this is now brazed to a steel fitting that goes underneath the frame and comes to our power steering reservoir. So keep in mind that if you take a Coyote from a Mustang, they have electric steering, I believe, and they don't have a power steering pump for something old. So this one does have that auxiliary power steering pump, which is what we had on it. I got the new hoses to go to our breather for our PCV. It didn't have a spot for my MAF sensor, so I put the MAF in there. The overflow tank had to put a fitting into the top, so that's where it was on the radiator on the old style. I still got to put some bushings into here, but that's fine. Underneath, we've got the transmission mount is in there. So that's all bolted in nice. That actually fit really, really nice underneath with the transfer case on it. I don't have the drive shaft in it because we're gonna fire it up. We're just gonna listen to it and make sure that everything's okay. Seen a couple videos where because the shifter linkage isn't on yet, didn't know which one was park, and as soon as it fired up, it ran out of the shop, and that's the worst thing you would want. So highly recommend leaving the drive shaft off or just putting the drive axle up on stands. Okay, now there was a plate, and you can see that plate when I was feeling for the torque converter, and as I pulled the torque converter close, what I did was I put a bolt in until it was tight up against the flywheel, the head was, then I spun it, and then I pulled the torque converter tight on the next bolt, and then went back to the other bolt and measured the distance that it pulled the torque converter closer, and it was excessive. So I took that steel plate out in between, then it fit perfect. So we bolted that down, bolted the exhaust down proper, drilled all the holes and mounted that, and then put our battery in. Don't worry about this mess right here. This is gonna be covered up in a little bit. Look at this beautifulness over here. This is just me figuring out how much wiring I need to give myself and how to mount these computers. But I think we're going to hot wire the fuel pump, then connect it to the green wire from the Holly, turn the ignition on. I've got the yellow wire to the starter. Now the reason none of this is wired up yet for this video is because next episode we're going to wire in this iKey intelligent key ignition. So rather than that stupid push button, the key that is very easy, if you know how to fire up one of these old Fords, it's extremely easy. So instead we're gonna have a nice push button. This just goes in your wallet and then you don't need a key. You just push your start button and she fires up. Now there's lots of videos on trucks getting stolen. And that's because they have that specific communication for your new Fords and your new Dodges, because those are all the same. Once you're in there, you're in. With Bluetooth and that, you can hijack that pretty easy. This doesn't have any of that. This is still a unique code to iKey, so you won't be able to steal it that way, and we'll put another redundancy on there as well. And the next episode, we'll make it actually shift with the US Shift Quick 6. So it was nice to see that we bought this about a year ago. And it was nice to see that Hughes uses this controller on their dyno to check all the shifting on the transmission. But because I want to take my time and do this nice and neat, we're just going to lick some wires and twist them together and then see if we can get this thing to fire. Now we used peak the entire way home because that old 302 kept overheating. It also wouldn't start for a half hour after we shut it off because the starter also heat soaked too. So I'm excited to now actually be able to not have to top up my fluid every single time we pull over off the highway, and I'm excited that I can start it when I shut it off. Okay, so fuel. I'm gonna pull these covers off, make sure that there don't be any leaks. Okay, so we'll listen for a change of sound in the pump. I blew every hose clean, and when we tested the Silverado, there was no junk in the line, so I'm not too worried about flushing the lines. There it changes. It's trying hard. I can hear it going over relief. Got nothing squirting out here. Anything squirting out underneath the truck? Woo. Okay. Oh. Exciting. All right, let's turn the sniper on. We'll see if we've got the right fuel pressure because that is a new pump. So we have communication, that's good. I see fuel pressure going up to 60, so I'm happy with that. I think it's not red, so that's good. We'll hook the fuel pump up to the Terminator green pump. Now our ignition timing, I think for the DVT, is missing. I think it fires without it. I'm not getting oil pressure. Why am I not getting oil pressure? All right, so I forgot my ignition coils. The Fords are a little different. You won't get spark without plugging these in, obviously. And I got confused because it'll run without the VCT controller. And I thought this was the ignition module, and these were the VCT controllers, but I gotta slow down and pay more attention. On that note, I wanna warn you guys, on a fresh build, this one wasn't as crucial. We cranked it because I wanted to see some oil pressure, but you're firing your injectors and not lighting that. You're just putting a bunch of fuel in your cylinders that is washing the cylinders down. So never do that on a new build. So on a new build, unplug your injectors and just verify that you have spark. If you're trying to find spark for a while, and you're just washing those cylinders down, it's not good for the break-in procedure. Because this one already has probably 8,000 miles on it, it's not that big of a deal because the rings are already seated. But that being said, it's a pain to check for spark because you got to pull the coil out, and it's but on an LS it's much easier. Just pull the wire off, plug in, verify you got spark, then plug in your injectors, and it should fire. But we're gonna fire this thing up now. I'm not as nervous as some of my other ones, but still, there's my pump. And gotta recheck my transmission fluid before we do anything crazy. All right, I don't think the shop is a mess, and it is. You guys always see the worst of it. When I'm working on a big project, I just start piling stuff because I get in and focused. So now it's time to clean. But this is running, that's running, the Audi's running, and the Silverado's running. Plus everything outside is running. The Fargo, the fuel isn't hooked up or whatever, but it will fire right up. So the only things not running right now are 48 Fleetmaster and our 95 Dodge. And I feel very, very happy about this, that every project is moving right along. Yeah, this is very, very exciting. Definitely check out Hughes Performance. Any transmission rebuild, give them a shout. If you're a member on our website, don't forget that you get the same discounts that we do to all of our partners. Rather than us taking a commission, which is what some of these companies offer, we want you guys to save the money to get your projects finished as well. Now, this thing has been a pile of work, and again, I wasn't gonna go this far with it. We went right to everything except pulling the body right off the frame, which we did after we shimmed the body lines anyway. So next video will be the finishing up of the wiring, and we'll take it down the road. This is my favorite vehicle, and I missed it last summer because we spent too much time on the low boy. I had to do all that outside and beat winter. This one is the family vehicle where everybody likes to drive down the road with the top down and wave and smile at everybody. But everything basically from here over is done. We don't see any leaks. We don't see any issues. We'll check all my fluids again. Next episode, we'll show you guys how to wire up that transmission because you guys have asked about that. Get the shifter cable done and the drive shaft. We'll take it for its first drive. Then there's a lot of little stuff like the radio, wiring the lights, bolting down the seats, putting the exhaust tips on. We probably won't include too much of that. Because that's all just little pain in the butt things again when you guys are doing your own project. These lists are great. Don't take it down the road until you get this. What was nice about this is the brakes and the steering was already done. So that's kind of a huge thing. Don't ever move the vehicle unless you've got working, fully functioning, safe brakes. I think this is about the second last build video on this series, and then it's just driving it and enjoying it. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich, get out there and work on it, because nobody else is going to do it for you. There we go.